So, when we think of the differences between an iron and a driver, we'll first think of obviously the length. So, this is a 7 iron here, and this is a driver. That's probably a difference of almost, I'm going to say 4 to 6 inches, right? Might be more than that. So, that's the first critical part. The second critical part is that with the driver, the golf ball's on the tee versus with the iron, the golf ball's on the ground. So essentially, as we know, we'll be hitting more down with the iron and more up with the driver. However, the discussion that we need to get into is how hitting more down or hitting more up changes impact dynamics, right? So I have this setup here with these at a target and with these two alignment sticks. And this represents essentially the arc of the golf swing. And I have these 3 golf balls here to represent that as well. So when we think of an iron, right, the ball position will be more in the middle of our stance relatively for a 7 iron, right? So when the golf ball is more in the middle of our stance, the club is shorter and we're hitting more down on it. What happens is without, let's say if I swung at a path of 0, right? So I swung pretty neutral. The thing is because I'm hitting down on the golf ball, right? So that would be this way in a downward direction. As you notice, what happens is that the path of this golf club naturally wants to swing out to the right when I hit down on the golf ball, right? If I swung at a swing direction of 0. And so let me explain the difference between swing direction and club path. Swing direction tells us the general direction the golf club is going from lead arm parallel to lead arm parallel. So from hip to hip. However, club path tells us the direction the club is going on at impact, right? And so that includes the attack angle, right? So swing direction negates attack angle while club path includes attack angle. So if we think about it, right? If I had a swing direction with an iron of 0, but I had an attack angle of, say, 3 down, when I'm swinging down, I'm hitting the golf ball earlier in the arc. And so if my path wants to go more out to the right with an iron and I'm hitting more down on it, that's why, let's say if you slice it or have a swing direction of in out to in, that you still hit the ball relatively straight. However, the thing is with that too, is that when it comes to swinging out to in and the natural club path of an iron is in to out, you neutralize that. So that causes a straight ball. So essentially, if I have this golf ball here in the middle, I'm going down the path of this stick behind me right here, right? Just because I'm hitting it early in the arc. And that's going to result in a golf shot that will be straighter, or say if you don't swing too far out to in, say you swing neutral, that it's going to draw a little bit more. And so I'm going to demonstrate this by hitting this shot right here. So, and just by simply, as you'll see, taking a divot and hitting down on it, that my path is going to be more in and out. Just like that. And so for me personally, I already swing in to out in terms of swing direction. So when I have the attack angle included, right, with an iron, it's going to draw even more. So now we're going to get into the driver and the effects of what happens when we deliver the golf club with the driver and it's on the tee. I hate to admit this, that I was once in your shoes where I was scrolling on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok on the latest golf tip to help me improve my golf game. Did that work for me? Maybe for about a few days or a week, but it never helped me improve long term. So what I learned and what you need to learn is that you need to know what your body can do physically and also what your most optimal golf swing is to help you improve your golf game. So how does that come into picture with me? Well, I will help you to understand your most optimal golf swing using both a TPI physical assessment to see what you can do physically, along with Sportsbox AI technology to help you to understand what your body is currently doing, and then also tracking the progress of specific parameters that we focus on to help you to improve your golf game. Ready to take action to improve your golf game on a long-term basis? Comment down below the word assess and let's get started. Now, moving into the driver, we have to understand the differences between the two, between the driver and the iron. And so, because the length of the driver is almost, say, 4 to 6 inches longer than a 7 iron, right? The natural bottom of the driver needs to be further up in my stance, as we know. And two, because it's on the tee, we're hitting up on the golf ball. However, I want you to notice when I go from, say, the position back here, say, following the path of this backstick, and I start to move the driver up in my stance. What happens to the natural path of the driver? Well, it starts to go more out to in, so following the path of this forward stick. And so when we think about that, again, so if you were to swing out to in with swing direction, say from lead arm parallel to lead arm parallel, when you come into impact, because the natural path of the driver wants to be more out to in, that'll result in a slice, right? So we need to factor in that impact dynamic. So what happens is, versus if you had a path, a natural path of 0-0, not natural path, natural swing direction of 0-0, so lead arm parallel to lead arm parallel, and you take the natural orientation of how the driver wants to swing because of the length change, now you produce more of a fade, right? So that's why a lot of times, if you look at tour players, a lot of times they tend to draw the ball with their irons and then fade it with their driver, versus a lot of amateurs tend to hit their iron straight but then slice it with their driver. So this is the subtle difference, because I'm on a tee, the ball's more forward, so I'm hitting it later in the arc, as represented right here, right? So this will be earlier in the arc, right here. And as I bottom out, because of the length change, this will be later in the arc. So in order for me to hit up on the golf ball, my path is going to move naturally out to in to the left for a right-handed golfer. And so I want you to see this when it comes to my golf swing. So I swing already naturally into out. And so with the natural attack angle and club after the driver, what's going to happen is that's going to produce a neutral ball flight. So let's take a look. Oh, that was a hook. Let's try it again. That's my tendency. There you go. So that produces a little bit of a draw for me because I swing in and out. So for me, I swing more in and out with my swing direction than I do the natural inclination of the driver being out to in, so that I produce my natural draw. So now let's get into how you can factor in these impact dynamics with the tilts and changes within your setup. Now that we know the effect that the driver in the iron has on a natural club path, now we need to adjust our setups accordingly with both, so we can have a better ball flight and preventing the slice with the driver while hitting it straight with the irons. So what I'm going to address here is the term called sway gap, right? Or a lot of times people like to call it axis tilt. So what it is the relation at setup of the middle of my chest and the middle of my pelvis. So if I were to take this stick here If I'm with an iron, because I'm going to be hitting more down on it, my chest will naturally be a little bit more over the middle of my pelvis, right? However, it depends on the length. So, say if I were hitting a wedge, right, because I'm really hitting more down on it, my chest will actually be a little bit more inclined forward of my pelvis, right? Because I'm not moving off it as much and I'm hitting more down on it to lower the ball flight, right? However, as soon as I start to lengthen the club, say going from 7-iron to driver, now this relationship will start to naturally get where the chest starts to get more behind the middle of the pelvis, right? So again, this will be more of a wedge. Then let's say this will be a 7-iron right here. And then this will be a driver, right? So now we're creating that relationship. And so why is that so important? Well, because, right, if I were to hit down on a golf ball, right, the natural inclination with any club, let's say for a right-handed golfer, is that the right hand for me is below my left. So I'm going to have a natural tilt. However, it's not going to be as excessive compared to a driver. So a lot of times, even with irons, which is why we can get away with it, is that amateurs are like this, right? So for a 7-iron, this middle of this chest is over the middle of this pelvis. So you can still hit straight shots with that just because of the natural path of the iron, including the attack angle. But as soon as you put the driver into play, right, but doing the same thing, and you want to hit up on the golf ball, that's not going to work because you're inclined now to hit down on the golf ball, right? That's the first thing. So you can't launch the ball. Second thing is we're getting the path more out to in with our swing direction. So hip from hip to hip. And so that's going to result in the slice. So what you need to do with the driver is, if this is the middle of my chest, I need this kind of tilt away from the target this way, right? So you can see how the bottom of this stick is pointed just inside my lead heel as my chest is pointed just behind, say, the middle, behind that middle golf ball, right? So now I'm in a position to hit up because my chest isn't going to be ahead of it, right? So that's the subtle difference. So if you watch me here, when I hit this iron, get a golf ball. If you watch me here when I hit this iron shot, you're going to see that I have some of that tilt. So let's say from a measurable standpoint, we want the sway gap to be negative, right? But how much? I would probably say on a range spectrum, probably say about in half an inch of negative sway gap to an inch. So if we go right here, maybe just like that. So it's not that much. It's more on top of each other. But we do not want the chest to be ahead, right? So we don't want the sway gap to be positive, because then although you may get away with that with the iron, when you get to the driver and try to do the same thing, then that's when the slice is going to occur. So I want you to have it where these are more even here, where you have the chest slightly behind the middle of the pelvis. And that results in a straight shot, right? So now when you get to the driver, because you already have a little bit of that negative sway gap, then we're just going to increase it a little bit more. And so if you think about it, just because our shoulders moves around our spine, this could be easily mistaken, right? Because I can protract and reach. So a lot of times amateurs, when they have this positive sway gap, is they have their right shoulder more protracted, so that would be towards the camera, and their left shoulder more retracted, so it results in this tilt. Instead, I want you to feel as if you get the right shoulder more retracted and the left shoulder more protracted. So then now you get that negative sway gap, and have the inclination to hit up on the golf ball and neutralize the natural path of the driver. So I'm going to show you here. So if I'm right here, set it up here. So if I'm right here, this is the mistake amateurs tend to make, is right shoulder retracted, right shoulder protracted, left shoulder retracted. And now we got that positive sway gap. Instead, if we get it where I retract this right shoulder and protract the left, now I get this negative sway gap that we need to hit the driver to then neutralize the natural path of the golf club with the driver going more out to in. So it'll be just like this. Let's try it again. And so for me personally, I actually probably don't need that much. Reason why? Because I already have enough. So, but this is just an example. So I have that negative sway gap this way. Just like that. So I want you guys to work on that and considering the factor of the impact dynamics between the iron and the driver so you can stop your slice for the driver, although you may hit your irons well. I hope that helps and have a wonderful day.